It has been almost 24 hours since Chrystia Freeland shook Ottawa and the country in an unprecedented resignation that hammered an already fragile Trudeau Liberal government and left a hole where the finance minister should be. Well, by early evening, that space was hastily filled by Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc.
My conversation with the Prime Minister today was entirely focused on the work that we want to do to support Canadians around affordability, obviously the threat of tariffs coming from an incoming administration, and what we need to do to protect the Canadian economy.
Meantime, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet, they're calling for an election. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is calling for Trudeau to resign. So to help us bring all these pieces together this morning, we are joined by the Globe and Mail's Marika Walsh. Good morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
You're reporting in the Globe and Mail on tensions between Trudeau and Freeland. Set the stage for this announcement. Freeland says the Prime Minister asked her to step aside as Finance Minister 3 days before the fall economic statement, so on the Friday. I'm curious, Marika, you've been following this story closely. What broke her? After years of saying publicly, the PM has my support, to write a letter that doesn't just exit her job, but criticizes him pointedly and personally, she abandoned her loyalty to him as a person. So where was the break? What did it?
I think it's exactly that meeting that you referenced, that Friday morning meeting that my colleagues are reporting happened even before her press conference, where our colleague Laura Stone pressed her exactly on this issue. The big question for me is, how is it that the Prime Minister's office thought that after telling his top lieutenant, his top cabinet minister, she would be fired in 3 days or 4 days or eventually replaced, that she would stick around to deliver this fall economic statement that, as our reporting says, there was tension over, she didn't necessarily agree with, and her letter lays that bare and confirms it all in detail and to a level that I was not expecting even after doing that reporting last week.
So she has stood by him before and directly so, when he has been directly criticized before. Is this because it was about her and ethics and the value of her job and her role? Because it had echoes a bit of Jody Wilson-Raybould and maybe even Jane Philpott, for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also of Bill Morneau, the past finance minister. She has actually stood by him as others were the ones being thrown under the bus, or as others were the ones feeling like they had no other option but to leave. And now she is finding herself, or has found herself, in that exact position and quit accordingly. But unlike the other people who left previously, this comes at a point of much precarity for the government. It comes at an absolute maximum pain point for the Prime Minister. I can't underscore enough. She did the most damage possible to him in the timing of her announcement, as well as the content of it. If you read that letter, she essentially is saying, I don't have confidence in you as the Prime Minister. She flicks at the notion that the government will no longer be the government at some point, inevitably, she says. And she says she's reoffering, raising lots of questions about whether she plans to make a run at replacing him. Either way, for the Prime Minister now, it is an hour by hour, minute by minute question of what happens next, and something that the Prime Minister's office, certainly yesterday, but also still this morning, can't really address.
Yeah, she didn't just exit. She threw a match on her way out. Is there anything, Marika, I wanted to ask you to this notion that Trump did not want Freeland as part of these negotiations? You know, we're a month out from his inauguration, and he let Trudeau know. We know that she wasn't there on the December 1st trip or December 3rd trip to Mar-a-Lago. She was the one who was there in this first Trump administration, wrestling with him toe-to-toe when he came in and ripped up NAFTA. She knows how to negotiate with this president. And in fact, when the Trump tariff post first went public, she was the one to say, hey, listen, they need us as much as we need them. There wasn't a lot of hand-wringing over border or drugs or anything like that. She outlines the lack of Justin Trudeau's lack of seriousness, what she called in her letter about tariffs. And then the post from Trump today saying that she was toxic and she had to go. Is there anything to the notion that Trump may not have wanted Freeland as part of this administration in the next first 100 days in office?
Look, there might be part of that. Maybe it's that she was too good a negotiator and he didn't like the outcome of the last one. But no matter how you cut it, on the flip side, that statement from Donald Trump actually might help Trudeau. I'm not sure it's very welcome, but because it also makes fun of him, calling him the governor of the 51st state, or the great state, of Canada. But certainly Trump makes very clear, as we had already known behind the scenes, that he is not a fan of Chrystia Freeland. But Anne-Marie, I'll remind you, she was the finance minister and the deputy prime minister. She wasn't taken to Mar-a-Lago. That was noticed, but she has a big role that can be more focused domestically, even with Trump there. We also have a foreign minister who has had a much lower portfolio so far with Trump. So I think there's a lot of questions, actually, about who is leading the government's response to the U.S.
Yeah.
And we might get clarity on that ASAP, because I'm told there's still talk of a cabinet shuffle as early as tomorrow. We still do not know really who the public safety minister is. There was talk that Dominic LeBlanc would stay on in that role while also being finance and intergovernmental affairs, but his website doesn't list him as that. And there are lots of questions as to how caucus will respond and whether Prime Minister can survive today, this week, this year, even from the pressure within his own caucus.
Rick, I have a couple quick questions for you. So if he does not resign, how long do the Liberals have after the House returns?
Well, I mean, he has only to get through today, right? The House of Commons is rising for the Christmas break today. So he only has to get through question period, and he's not even going to be in it. Somebody else will be there speaking for him. He's still going to his Liberal Party's holiday party this evening. He has not yet spoken to Canadians to address this in any way. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Marika, I'm just curious. I know that Trudeau is heading to the party, but will Freeland be there? She's still a Liberal MP.
Oh, I don't know where Freeland will be. She's not the deputy prime minister anymore, so we don't get the same itinerary release, but certainly she was at caucus last night. So I would imagine she will be there, because she's clearly taking the position of not backing down and not removing the thorn from his side that she has put in.
Last question, Rika. Where's Mark Carney in this equation?
The $1 million question. That was one of the stories we reported last week that I think led to this boiling over point on Friday, where the prime minister acknowledged that, according to Chrystia Freeland, he no longer wanted her to be finance minister. But I'm not sure that the events and how they have played out over the last 24 hours would make Mark Carney more likely to join this government. It does not look like a government that is more stable. It looks like a government that is very much struggling to get by in the next minute, not with a long view. And so I'm curious to see whether or not he does enter the fray. But it seemed from our understanding over the weekend that he was still quite lukewarm on the recruitment from the prime minister, even though this is, the umpteenth attempt from the prime minister to get Mark Carney on board.
Well, there was a lot for him to consider after yesterday's events. Marika Walsh, it's been great following your reporting with the Globe and Mail. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.